empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? We're 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go.
Welcome to the Scoop World Order. It is Monday night. We've got some great stuff coming. We have Bill the Bank Greene joining us tonight to talk some recruiting, talk some of the movement around college football, the NFL, all kinds of great stuff. We're going to take your questions and talk about the latest and greatest in Ohio State football. So appreciate you joining us as always. Switch my setup around a little bit. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. We know you guys have a lot of things to look at online, and we appreciate you guys joining us. We love making this thing interactive, so get those questions fired up in our chat. We are ready to rock and have a great day. If you enjoy this content, please leave us a like and click subscribe on the video. That being said, I'm bringing in my good friend, Bill the Bank Greene. Bank, how are you today?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. First thing we're going to get to right away is the 2024 quarterback situation. Again, this has been one of the strangest, I don't know if it's a learning lesson. I don't know what it is, but last year at this time, there was a lot of heat on the Dominic or the Dylan Raiola thing was starting to heat up about this time last year. Again, I always laugh because he came to I believe the Purdue game or the Michigan, one of the last games of the year in 2021. And it wasn't like a huge deal. It wasn't like a guy that was the number one overall, because he wasn't number one overall yet. And he wasn't the 5-star God's gift quite yet, but then he kind of surged and became that guy. And, then all of a sudden it was this infatuation with Ohio State, Ryan Day, the family came multiple times during spring football, leading up to the crescendo moment of spring ball, where all of a sudden at the spring game, Jaden Davis is heading to the game, Dylan Raiola is coming to the game. I asked his father literally on that Tuesday when I was like, that Monday, I said, hey, are you coming to the game? He said, no. Then on Tuesday, you put something on BuckeyeScoop.com that said, possibly, he is coming now. And I was like, well, that's weird. I talked to the dad yesterday, and he said he wasn't coming. I texted him that same day that you said that. He said, we might be coming now. And I was like, what? I was like, what changed? And then all of a sudden, I got the kind of the backstory where it's like, Jaden Davis is coming. They think he's going to commit. It's like the OK Corral, all over again. But what are your thoughts on kind of everything that's transpired? Obviously, we know the Raiola thing turned into the Hindenburg and just blew up. And now all of a sudden we're back wide open, and we kind of stiff-armed some really good quarterbacks in that 2024 class led by Jaden Davis. And you have some other guys, but where are we at right now with this? What has Ryan Day and Corey Dennis learned from this experience? Because again, we kind of put off the 2023 recruits. We took a kid late, Lincoln Keenholz, I think is really good. But, there were guys that, we're dying to be Buckeyes that were rated much higher than Lincoln that we stiff-armed because we didn't want to scare off Dylan Raiola, and then we don't even get Dylan Raiola. So what are your thoughts on that whole situation, how it went down, and where are we at now?
Yeah, I don't know what you learned from that situation other than, every year is a new year, and it's a new crop of recruits, and you have to play it by ear. Recruiting is not something that there's not a book for this. Okay. I mean, you take it as it comes, and, I don't know, do you not go after a highly rated superstar kid ever again? I don't think that's the way to go. The Raiola thing absolutely blew up in their face, and it, cost them the ability to go after, one of the higher rated 2023 guys. They rebounded well to get Lincoln Keenholz, so he's fine. I don't think he would have been their first choice or second or third or fourth choice in that class. And, they did or did they not promise Dylan Raiola and the family that they wouldn't take a top guy? I don't know. We were told that they were, but that could be the Raiola family just kind of propping themselves up. So I don't know what you learned. You move forward, you plow forward, you do the best you can. Like you said, they were lucky to pull the kid in the end, the Keenholz kid. It was pretty darn good recovery, to end up with him. That's fine. Now in this class, man, it is, they had Raiola. They thought they had Raiola all along. The nice thing is he decommitting when he did gives you a long time to rebound from losing him. It's not like he decommitted on you 2 weeks before signing day. It's fine. And right now they've got some candidates in mind, 3 guys that basically 2 with 1 as a fallback. and I think they're going to be fine. I think, right now it just seems like Alabama is kind of playing musical chairs with everybody. And, I don't understand what they're doing, but, you know, Nick Saban's been at this a long time. He's got Julian saying committed, and why he's offering other quarterbacks is beyond me. But we'll see what happens. And the big fly in the ointment right now is, Tommy Rees going from Notre Dame to Bama as their OC. Notre Dame's got a quarterback committed, CJ Carr, that I'm sure Tommy Rees has a great relationship with. Does Bama offer CJ Carr now also? How do they go there? So that's going to be something really interesting to follow. Is CJ Carr as another, guy thrown into the mix now? Does he just stick with Notre Dame and, say, hey, I got my school, I love where I'm at? Or does he think Tommy Rees is his guy? And if Tommy Rees, offers him to come to Alabama, does he take it? And where does that leave Julian Sand? Where does that leave Aaron Nolan? And then you still got Jaden Davis. They're trying to get back in there with him. So fascinating to watch here how this whole quarterback situation plays out.
What was your initial reaction when you found out that Alabama, who you and I both revere, and we both think that Nick Saban's the GOAT, obviously, for what he's done. I mean, you can't really argue it at this point with his statistics. But Tommy Rees, 60th overall offense at Notre Dame. I watched that offense in person in the shoe last year. Was it? Now, granted, he's got much better talent at Bama. But, I was kind of surprised. I mean, after you have Sarkisian and you've got these NFL guys, Brian Dable, Bill O'Brien, and then you go Tommy Rees. Like, what was your reaction initially to that hire?
Yeah, I was really surprised by it. And then when talking to people in the business, other college coaches, I talked to 3 or 4 guys, and a couple of them were very surprised, and a couple of them thought it was a great hire. So, like you said, Tommy Rees is going to get a whole different class of dudes to coach now. People were saying, last year that the Notre Dame or the Alabama receivers had kind of slipped over what they had been. They're still better than the Notre Dame receivers, I promise you. And so he's going to deal with a different breed of cat now, and he's also going to be going against, different defenses than he's gone against. So it's a big step up for Tommy Rees. I don't know. I don't know what to think. Like I say, I know a couple of guys that are just totally on board with Tommy Rees. I think he's, like a bright young mind, up and comer. And then I know people that are like, they could have done a lot better than this. So I don't know. Proof will be in the pudding, Nick. And he does this all the time. I mean, if you go back and look, it's not like he's been married to either the offensive defensive coordinator his whole time. He goes through them like crazy. So we'll see. He said he's done pretty well, replacing coordinators. So we'll see how this one works out.
Yeah, it's just interesting because generally, like, in all the recent hires that you've noticed, it's been guys that have been former head coaches. Usually come into the program as analysts. He kind of, again, that's the thing that I admire about him. He always has this bullpen that's really deep of Lane Kiffin sitting in the room, former USC head coach as an analyst, then your former Oakland Raiders head coach. Then he has, Sarkisian sitting in the room, Brian Dable, who, did a great job with the Giants this year. I mean, he has guys, Bill O'Brien, who Bill Belichick had to come get to save Mac Jones's career. Obviously, I already mentioned Sark, but Sark goes on to Texas, gets a hugely lucrative job. Guys that have coached in Super Bowls, guys that have been big time minds elsewhere. And now, he's kind of done something that he's never really done. He goes against a 32-year-old kid who's basically been at one place. And part of me wonders, is the Tommy Rees thing because I don't think jealousy is the right word, but the fact that Marcus Freeman came in, he was there for a year. They promote him to head coach over the guy that's played quarterback at Notre Dame, was a lifer at Notre Dame. And, I wonder if that was maybe him just saying, hey, I got to get out of the nest to go spread my wings and learn from the GOAT. Or if it was, FU, not FU, but that's a little strong. But, you guys hired Marcus Freeman, who was here for a year. He's an outsider over me, the tried and true, blue blood Notre Dame guy. That's something I always wondered. What did you think of Kevin Steele, the DC hire? Because, he comes from the Hurricanes, who were just terrible last year on defense. And I know he's been at Bama before, but, right. I just, when you look at the numbers, because I'm like you, I'm a numbers guy. Numbers don't lie. People can lie, and you can you put lipstick on a pig all you want, but when you look at the numbers, like the numbers at Miami weren't pretty last year. Were you surprised by that hire?
In a way, yes, but then in a way, this guy's a tried and true, proven SEC guy. He's been around a long time. He's coached a lot of different places. He's been at Bama before with Nick. So, but then again, I don't know. I didn't see the NFL beating down the door to hire Kevin Steele. So I don't know. It's Nick, and you tend to give him the benefit of the doubt, man, because of what he's done. So we'll see. But Tommy Rees, he's getting, a really young up and comer for offense, a guy that Brian Kelly really wanted to hire at LSU, and Tommy Rees decided to stay at Notre Dame with Marcus. So it's kind of strange he wouldn't go with Brian Kelly into the SEC. Now he goes with Nick Saban. But then Kevin Steele's a lifer. You know what I mean? He's just one of those guys, been around forever. I would kind of compare him almost to like a Kevin Wilson type, who Ohio State had. I think Kevin Steele's the same thing on the defensive side. Just one of those dudes, been around forever, seen it all, done it all, been there, done that. So, I think both are, in a way, both are kind of questionable hires, for Nick Saban. But, we've seen him do this so many times over the years, replacing coordinators. It's just not that big a deal to him, I guess. I mean, he always seems to find a way. And the one common denominator through everything there is always Nick Saban. He remains. So you have to think, like you said, we'll see. The proof's in the pudding. And, it's not going to take long, man. Those are high profile, high pressure jobs. He is not an easy guy to work for. You know that. Yeah. And that fan base, you think Ohio State fan base is rabid, and they are, but that Bama fan base, just as rabid. And, the pitchforks will come out real soon for both of those guys if things aren't, what they expect it to be.
I worked with a guy that actually worked for Saban for a long time, and I'll say this, you'll probably say I never knew that he worked for Nick Saban for a long time, but Jim Bowman worked with Nick Saban at Michigan State for a long time, and he had some classic stories that I'll tell you offline because, man, they were of his daughter used to watch the kids, like was Saban's babysitter and stuff. I mean, he is a wild man. I mean, it is, and again, like I think that's part of the reason. I think part of the reason for his turnover is the fact that he obviously is ultra successful. People want to, Tennessee comes in there and hires like every coach from Bama, and Georgia got Kirby Smart, and Texas got Sark, and these guys. McElwain eventually made his way to Florida. He was a Bama guy. They all want to know what is the process, and they want to emulate the process, clone the process, and most of them other than Kirby haven't really. I mean, obviously Kirby's he's cloned it, and he takes advantage of the fact that Georgia's just an absolute monster of high school football now, and has this incredible talent to consume and turn into national championships. But Nick, I mean, he's the guy that they take everyone away from him, and he's still the guy that whoops them every year. So, but my question for you is, how many more championships do you think? If I put the over under at 1, do you think he gets another one? Can he get over Kirby and Georgia, or is it? Because Georgia's recruiting like a monster right now, but what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't know. I've seen a couple of articles about how Bama has slipped, and they lost 2 games last year. They lost them both on the last play, and nobody can tell me that had Bama gotten in the playoffs last year, that they couldn't have won it all last year. I think they could have. I mean, you're telling me they couldn't have beaten Ohio State or Michigan or TCU? I think they could have. And then you got to play Georgia in a 1-game setting. Nick Saban in a 1-game setting, his odds are pretty good. So I think they could have won it last year. And, we'll see this coming year how it is. But I don't think they've slipped as far as people think they've slipped. You know what I mean? They're they lost 2 games last year in the last play of the game. They were inches away from being undefeated last year going into the playoffs. So I wouldn't count them out just yet. And I don't see any sign that he's close to retiring. I think he's got 5, 6, 7. I don't know. Assuming he doesn't have a health issue, I think he's going to be there a while. And he seems to get younger every year. His hair gets gets nicer looking. And, of course, we can take care of that. But
Oh,
so I would say he's going to win another one. He may win this year. You know what I mean?
oh,
So yeah, I wouldn't count him out just yet. And like I said, last year was a year that the sky was falling and the program was done, and they lost 2 games. You know what I mean? They went to the bowl game, played that Kansas State team that was a really good team, just as good as TCU, probably on the same line as Michigan or Ohio State. That team was good, and he absolutely demolished that team. So, and Bama usually doesn't like to play in those kind of bowl games where they have nothing to play for. They didn't make the playoffs. Those are usually bowl games where they slip up.
yeah.
And they did not slip up. They were whipped up, and I think they kind of showed everyone, like, enjoy your playoffs, but there aren't 4 teams better than me. So 12-team playoff last year, you wouldn't want to play that team.
No.
With Will Anderson and Bryce Young and that crew. There's no way you want to play those guys if they had somehow gotten in the 12-team playoff. So I don't think they've slipped that far. They have the number 1 recruiting class every single year, and guys transfer, they leave. He replaces them with a new crew. So, we'll see. Like I said, the 2 coordinator hires are questionable. And, Bama's always the one you keep an eye on just because they're going to draw some eyeballs just because of how they dominated the sport. And, kind of like David Pollock said on the postgame show right in front of Nick Saban, Georgia's the king of college football right now. I'm sure Nick is still seething over that remark, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But, usually when you question Saban, you end up wrong and he ends up right.
The final thing we're going to talk about Bama, because this is not going to just be a pure Bama, but, I do admire, you saw their NIL commercial where they came out and it was, this is the University of Alabama NIL entity, and it was it was extremely well done. Nick Saban with Kool-Aid McKinstry, like the top returning guys, and they sprinkle in the volleyball girls and the softball girls and the basketball coach, and they say, we need you, we win championships, we win the SEC, this is the entity. Why hasn't Ohio State done that yet?
Well, that's you kind of put me on the spot there. I guess that's what I've been saying all along is I don't think Ohio State NIL is that far off. I really don't. I just think, I think the whole thing needs tweaked a little. I'm waiting for that commercial to hit. That's amazing. Where is it? Let's add that. And I just think that, the different collectives, I think they're not on the same page, but I think they're close, and like people, I think, have a misconception of this whole thing. Like, we don't pay kids up front. Yes, you do. Okay. Is Jelani Thurman hitchhiking where he needs to go right now? I don't think he is. Carnell Tate? Is Carnell Tate like looking to find quarters on the ground so he can go buy a hamburger from McDonald's? No. Carnell Tate has money in his bank account. I believe Jelani Thurman has a vehicle. I think, isn't that what you were told also?
Oh, I saw it. Well, he tweeted. We procured it. It's a new Charger. It's beautiful.
So everybody's getting upfront.
Yeah.
So stop with the fact that Ohio State only pays on performance, which they do, but yet there's also upfront too. Carnell Tate has not caught a pass yet, and he has money in his bank account. So it's just a question of, are you paying the 15 or 20 million that maybe Miami would pay? And no, Ohio State isn't doing that. They shouldn't do that. And Bama and Georgia aren't doing that either. You know what I mean? So I don't think the Ohio State NIL situation is that far off from where it needs to be. But I just think it needs tweaked a little bit. And I think things more on the same page, maybe with I don't know. I think things could be tweaked and can be done better.
So, yeah, I agree. I think they're going to get to the point where they streamline it. I think the hardest part right now with the Ohio State NIL deal is there's just too much confusion. People don't know, know, who to give to, who gives to what, where does my money go to? And again, the thing about NIL is I think that it's, the people that are at the head of the collectives, it's such a thankless job because people are like, oh, is it crooked? Is it shady? Are you just trying to be
Yeah.
a jock sniffer? Like, are you trying to like, and again, that's why like, it's just, I mean, most people wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And plus, again, it's a tough sell because, okay, where does my money go towards? Does it go towards saving the, the bald eagle from extinction or something? No, it goes towards buying a kid a new mink coat or something or whatever, or a new diamond chain. And people like, it's a tough sell, but it is what it is. Um, in terms of the recruiting that we have, we talk quarterbacks. Obviously, the number one discussion every year is offensive tackles. And it's funny because I never realized how much people loved offensive tackles until I got into this gig because people are obsessed with offensive tackles and everybody
I
loves it.
I go
What,
through it, have for
uh,
25 years. I'm O-line in general, not just tackles, but O-line in general, because it's just so darn important. You
yeah,
know, you're when I look, we talked to Phil Steele before the season started last year, and I kind of felt like I was going out on a limb when he was talking about how we analyze teams, and it was like, uh-oh, the great Phil Steele just asked me how I analyze teams, and you look like a fool here to this guy. And I said, I go by head coach, then quarterback, then defense, then O-line, not running back, not those great receivers, not those, beautiful linebackers. They're lumped in with the defense, and he agreed 1,000%. He said, that's exactly the way I do it too. It made me feel good. But I mean, I think O-line is that important. I don't think you can win with a bad O-line. I think you can mask some other problems. I don't think you can't dress that one up. So that's why I think it's that important. And it is something people obsess over year after year after year. And mostly, I think we're kind of proven right year after year after year. I mean, I can go back when I took a lot of crap for Antonio Underwood and Tommy Brown and Chris Carter. They took those kids early. Those kids were in the hopper before the spring game. I wouldn't have taken those, would have been kids that I would have invited to camp. Let them work out. Let's see where they're at. I feel the same way about this group now. I don't see, like, I would have my board top centers, top guards, top interior guys, top outside guys in America. And that's how I'm going to work my board down. If you've got these Ohio kids at the top of your board and say, look, these guys are better than anybody in the South, better than anybody out West, better than anybody in Texas, then you offer them and go after them. I find it hard to believe that they have these kids as the top offensive linemen in America right now for 224, but they've offered them, and all three of them could commit tonight. And if they go to commit, you're going to take them. So, you can't really mess around with Ohio kids. So if you're throwing the offer out there, it's a real offer and they take it, they're in. So I don't know. I wouldn't have offered these kids this soon. I'd want to see them in April when you're allowed to go on the road and go to their school and watch them work out. I'd want to see that. And then you can bring them into camp in June. Nobody's signing anything right now. I think people kind of freaked out when Luke Hamilton, committed to Michigan and had some things to say. And then it's like, oh my God, we're losing linemen. No, he hasn't signed anything yet. And Ohio State saw him in camp. They didn't offer him. So I don't know. I think these offers are very premature. Now they know more than I know, but this is just my thinking is these three kids that they've offered recently, to me, wouldn't be at the top of the Ohio State board. I can't believe they're at the top of the board. But, I don't know. Maybe they want to lock in three guys right now you think you can get quickly to go with, the Moore kid. Then you'd have four in, which I don't know. It's probably not how I would do it, but we'll see. Like you said, proof's always in the pudding. It's always in the results. This reminds me of a Tommy Brown, Chris Carter class, or maybe what they did a few years ago when they were locking up Trey LaRue this early in the process, Grant Toutant this. It kind of reminds me of that you're kind of jumping the gun too soon here just to get bodies in the hopper early, which I don't think that's a winning play. Unless it's Paris Johnson. If you got another Paris Johnson, I'll take him right now.
Yeah, that's always the interesting thing because like a guy like Paris generally doesn't commit this early generally just because he doesn't have to. I mean, he could commit. You're gonna hold one for him till after signing day if he wants to. So Yeah, it's always one of those interesting things because just from my time as a coach at Ohio State and camp to camp, I always like seeing how much these guys' bodies transformed over being a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old. Because some of these guys, they gain a lot of weight, they lose a
Sure.
lot of weight. They like our boy Thayer lost like 80 pounds.
Right.
He was like
Right.
380, sluggish, and he got down
What
to
what
315.
did they offer him? They didn't offer him on
Like, did they?
signing day junior year.
Oh, they
He was
offered him, yeah, like the week
great.
before signing day like the last signing day.
That's I wouldn't wait that long on these kids, but I would want to see them like their last football game was in November. They haven't done anything since November. There have been no camps, no combines, no nothing. So why are you offering him in February that you didn't offer him in November when you saw him in November? That's the thing that's surprising to me. What have they done since November that they were non-offers in November, but today, man, we got to offer them now because they're about to go to Pitt or Virginia Tech or something. Like, I don't get it. Plus, even if they committed to Pitt or Virginia Tech tonight, that shouldn't bother you at all. You're the Ohio State University. Like, big deal if they committed to Purdue. Go get them when I want them. So I don't know. To me, they're premature offers. But again, they know more than I know. But I think it's quick to pull the trigger on these kids.
Does a kid like William Satterwhite getting a Bama offer, does that make you a little bit more trigger happy to offer him? Because he's one of the guys that hasn't gotten an offer from Ohio State, and his offer list with just that Bama offer, I mean, that's the crown jewel of offers. So if Bama's gone on a kid, and like your boy Wolf, who's down there, the offensive line coach, I mean, you assume that's a committable offer. Does that make you? I don't know if anxious is the word, but is that because I mean, when you're offering kids that the best offers are Pitt and Virginia Tech and Michigan State and that type of thing, versus a kid who has a BAM offer who you haven't offered yet, how would you proceed if you were Ryan Day or Brian Hartline or Justin Fry and you're the guy that doled the offers out? Would that make you really think hard that because again, that kid doesn't seem like he's close to committing to Bama, but a Bama offer changes everything for me because I'm like, well, that's a different breed. Because if Bama is coming to Ohio for a kid, they have to see something that's really exquisite because they can literally get anybody. They got Caden Proctor out of Iowa, a kid that we would have crawled across, glass and, anything to get, to start at left tackle next year. He went to Bama instead where they already have, two tackles ready to go. But what would that do to your calculus just from that Bama offer popping up?
And like I said, I'm not a coach. The one thing I would compare it to, if it compares, is I had to rank kids every year when I worked for 24/7 and Scout. So I had to rank the kids in Ohio. So when I saw a kid, like if I was doing the rankings right now, I would look at it the same way I think college teams look at it. You form your board and you work your board. And if I had Satterwhite ranked as the number 15 prospect in Ohio, which I think that's where he is, right? Somewhere around there right now. And I saw that he got offered by Bama, I would not immediately move him to number 9. I wouldn't do it. I mean, I can't go by that. I've got to work my board, so to speak. My rankings have to be my rankings. They can't be, Ohio State just offered that kid, the Twins are a perfect example from St. Ed's. And I like them. They're good players, really good kids from what I've been told. But right now, if those kids commit to Ohio State tonight, they will be 4 stars within 2 weeks. I've been through those. I know how it goes. If they commit to Michigan State tonight, they will remain 3 stars. And that's bullcrap because I never did that. I got overruled a lot because I just did the state of Ohio. And, if somebody wanted to overrule me, there was nothing I could do about it. I did my rankings, and then you finalize them any way you want. But I know from doing this for 20 years, that's the way it'll be. That's why rankings are, man, you almost have to take them with a grain of salt because there's a lot of politics involved in those rankings. It's just the way it is. I mean, and it makes no sense. It wouldn't be that way for me when I rank kids, and it wouldn't be that way for me if I was a coach. I'm going to work my board. And, I just can't believe that they have these 3 Ohio kids as the top O linemen in America. It's hard for me to believe that that's where they're seeing them through their eyes. So I just think it's early to offer these kids.
If you had to give, like, and you don't have to give a particular order for the top 3 to 5 offensive linemen in the state of Ohio right now, before you've seen them in camp, off the top of your head in this 24 class, who would you go with? I'd imagine the Twins are probably in the top 5, but are there 3 other guys
Yeah.
that you could name where you're like, I'd like to
Um,
see these guys again in camp, see them work versus some DNs and in pass rush drills?
yeah, I mean, I think the way they're ranked nationally is probably correct. And again, I'm just going off what I saw last October. You know what I mean? We can put film in right now of every one of these kids, and we can break down every one of them. But we're looking at last October, last November, and in this business, man, kids change rapidly. So what you're seeing on film in November may not be what you see. You're out on the road in April. You can go to his school and watch him work out, you know, in April. And then you can also bring him back into camp in June. And normally what you see in June is especially with a lineman, those guys are growing, bodies changing by the day. Brandon Innes has probably been the same body type since he was in the 9th grade. He doesn't look that much different. These O linemen, they're going to look dramatically different, and they're going to move dramatically different. So what you're seeing on film from last October is not at all what you're going to see next June. Sometimes for the better, and sometimes it's like, I don't like this kid. I liked him on film last year, but now that we're seeing him up close, personal, I don't like what I see. So that's why I like the spring evaluation phase, going out on the road in April and into May, and then bringing them into camp in June. You really get an updated version of who you're dealing with. And if it's Paris Johnson, I'm offering him, ASAP. But some of these guys like that I think are good and guys I want to see, I don't understand offering them now when they're not going anywhere, as opposed to working the process, taking your time. Let's get to know them a little bit. Let's get out and see them in the spring and then bring them into camp in June. That's how I would do it for these guys, for all these Ohio guys right now. I don't see any Paris Johnson in this class, but I see a lot of maybe potential Pat Elflines, that you waited late to get, and he ended up being a superstar. So I don't see anybody in this class I would pull the trigger on early, but I see a lot of guys that, I want to see more of. Let's put it that way.
I mean, in terms of national offensive tackle recruiting this year, I'm just looking at 247's rankings because they've been around the longest. Their number 1 tackle on the board is Cam Pringle, committed to South Carolina, 4 stars. So I think overall nationally, this is a down year for tackles. I don't see like, a Paris or a. Some years you see these guys, you're like, oh yeah, that's
Right,
Joe Alt,
right.
the kid from Notre Dame, who's going to be a first top 5 pick in next year's draft. We'll see him against we've got South Bend, but Gerby Lambert's the guy that Ohio State's interested in.
I like him.
I love him. I think he'd be a fantastic kid. He's the number 2 guy right now. Daniel Calhoun, a kid who's from Georgia, likely will go to Georgia. Brandon Baker, a kid from Mater Dei, California. I mean, it's interesting because there's 2 kids from South Carolina, kid from Georgia, kid from Massachusetts. That's Kirby Lambert, and the first Ohio kid is, I believe it's Luke Hamilton, and he's at 13.
Yeah, and I saw him. I saw him in camp last year, and I've seen the film, and I liked him. I wouldn't have offered him all this early. I know Michigan took him. Michigan's doing well, and they're beating Ohio State with kids that Ohio State wouldn't take. And I don't know if this has caused like a shift in philosophy, which wouldn't be for me, but I don't know. Like I say, we'll see. Proof's in the pudding. You always find out down the road, that whether you were right or wrong, and I would go back to that class from a couple of years ago, and not to count those kids out. They're still, they can still get better, but there were kids in that class that I think we kind of felt were reaches, and so far it looks like they were. So we'll see how it goes.
Do you did you watch much of Carson Hinsman, who looks like he's the incumbent to start at center this year, just based on what Justin Fry said? Justin Fry came out. He said it's going to be Donnie Jackson at left guard on day one, and it's going to be Matt Jones at right guard on day one, which honestly shocked me
Yeah, me
because,
too.
he at center, he's saying that you're going to go with Carson Hinsman and then Victor Cutler, the kid who transferred in,
The
who
new guy. Yeah, yeah,
a kid that I didn't think looked like a center. I didn't think he was stout enough to be a center. I mean, when I saw him play left tackle, thin legs, didn't look like a very strong kid. He looked athletic, but does not look like a guy that you'd want to be an anchor at center. Because again, I know like good centers like at Ohio State, like Billy Price won the Remington, exceptionally strong. Corey Lindsley, exceptionally strong. Nick Mangold, exceptionally strong. With Charles Bentley, so it's like putting a guy that isn't a huge, strong, squat guy in the middle. Like it's all Josh Myers. I mean, Luke Whippler is a tank.
yeah,
So I question that. I like if you put a gun to my head, I'd put DJ at left tackle just because he's our best guy, most talented guy. Played left
yeah,
tackle in Texas high school football, did really good. I put Matt at center because
yeah.
my biggest question is and Enoch was a guy we saw in camp. Obviously struggled against Michigan, but he's a fifth year
Oh,
guy. And
yeah.
where does he fit now? If he's a true guard,
And
and
this
you know
kind of the point when we talk about, or I talk about saying that I'm not at all sold on the O line next year for Ohio State. I'm not sold at all on what they have. Because you just, I think you got to have 6 or 7 guys that can play. Injuries are usually going to happen. Ohio State's been very lucky with injuries, but they usually happen. I don't see I don't see 3 guys that can play right now. Doesn't mean that they won't have 6 or 7. I just don't see them right now. I too would put Matt Jones would go to center. He's the most experienced guy. He's played in a lot of football games at Ohio State, a lot. So he would be my center and definitely would get Donovan Jackson on the outside. I don't think you want to break in 2 new offensive tackles as much as they throw the ball. And plus, I think he's their best lineman. He reminds me a lot of Paris when Paris in 2021, they played at guard just to get their best guys on the field. He was out of position. That's not where he's going to be, not where he needs to be. He did it for the good of the team, and he was okay. He was a good player. Same with Donovan Jackson, playing out of position in my mind. I think in your mind, did it for the good of the team. You got Dewan and Paris as tackles, so you can't play tackle. You got to play guard for a year, and then with his feet and his length, I know he's not a tall guy, but he's got long arms, he's got great feet. He'd be my left tackle, absolutely. Be Matt
yeah.
Jones at the center. Donovan Jackson would be at left tackle, and the rest of you dudes got to fight it out for your spots after that. I have no clue after that. Josh Fryer might be a player. I don't know. I think Josh is better suited inside. And I also think he's better suited as a 6th or 7th man, not a starting guy. We'll see. He may be an NFL guy. I don't know. So you've got 2 for sure, Matt Jones and Donnie Jackson. You got a half a guy that we think, or I think, might be able to play in Fryer. And then after that, there's no way anybody's going to tell me, oh, we got this guy and this guy. How are you missing them? Hey, I watched them. And, the nut that I am, when the games are blowouts and I'm watching them, I can't wait till they put the backup O-line in. I can't wait to watch those guys. So I'm the one still watching when it's 48-2, when everybody else has shut the TVs off. I'm still watching them. And then when I rewatch games the next day, I'm still watching them when it's 48-2 and everybody else has their articles ready to go and break down everybody. Not me, man. I want to watch every play I can watch of that backup O-line. I didn't think they were very good last year. So we'll see. I think you have 2 for sure dudes. You got one guy that might be a dude, and then you got a bunch of question marks after that. So that's why I'm not as high on the O-line. I don't see how you remove Luke Whippler, DeJuan Jones, and Paris Johnson, take them out of there, and have someone tell me, oh, we're going to be better on the O-line for sure. It's like, really? How? Who? You're talking about air. And maybe Trey LaRue is an All-American next year. Maybe Enoch Vamahi is all Big Ten next year. And you're better than what you had last year. Maybe Fryer really is a superstar. I mean, to me, you're blowing smoke. If you're trying to say this O-line will be better next year than what it is now, when nobody can tell me who's going to start, I think you're blowing smoke by saying it's going to be better on the O-line. Like, there ain't no way you subtract 3 NFL guys and you get better. Just doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way at Bama. It's not working that way at Ohio State.
Yeah, I think this is the offseason where, this is.
I mean, Justin Fry is under, you know what I mean? And the O-line coach at Ohio State, it is a great job to have for the fans, like for the first year when you're on the job. You get a nice 1-year grace period. And, man, after that, you're almost under as much scrutiny as the head coach. It's close. You know what I mean? You're close, man, in terms of scrutiny. And in terms of people questioning you, and they get loud too. I mean, the O-line guys like right up there with the DC, and they're right next to right next to the head coach in terms of who's going to take the blame here. So Justin Fry, I mean, you get a 1-year grace period. That period is over. It's over. Yeah, he's on the clock now, and you're offering these 3-star Ohio kids, and then we'll see what goes on the field next year. But this time next year, I mean, the whole aura surrounding Justin Fry could be 100% different than what it is right now. Because they come after you quick, at Ohio State, Bama, Georgia. Grace period's over, man. You get 1 year. You get 1 year free. 1 year's free. And then you're on the clock. And he's on the clock right now. He's on the clock.
They'll be saying grace at your funeral. That's about it.
He's well liked as Jim Bowman, Ed Warner, and Greg Stadrell. Be as well liked as those guys were.
Me and Eddie ball game, man, in 12. Like when we took over that line. I mean, we lost Mike Adams, 2nd-round pick. A kid that was, kind of all over the place, but I mean, really talented. I mean, the Steelers, who are maybe one of the top 3 organizations in football, took him in the 2nd round. So it's like Mike Tomlin and those guys do good evaluations. Now he didn't pan out there. He had back injury. He's out for the rest of his life. Great kid, nice kid. Lost Brewster, lost Shugarts, which again, that's not losing Dewan and PJ and our center Whippler. But this is where being the O-line coach and the O-line GA it's 6 days a week, man. We didn't take a vacation. It was like, because that race to spring ball, you'll blink and spring ball will be here. And it's like, your guys better be ready to rock, man. Because when you've got Marvin and Emeka and these guys and Trey Henderson, and they're counting on that O-line. And the biggest thing is in spring football, you have to get a good evaluation on your quarterback. And if he's constantly getting sacked and you're constantly giving up inside pressure, you can't get an evaluation on Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. And that's something that, with Ed and I, it was mostly because Urban had his foot squarely up our behinds every single day that, hey, these guys are fat. They need to lose weight. So these guys they would be on that elliptical for an hour a day, all of them. No matter who it was, no matter if they started or were backups, we lost like 700 pounds of body fat between our O-line in like 2 months because we were just, we worked them like Roman slaves basically because we had to get them to be in shape. We had to make them into killers. And like, in 12.
That's how important that position is, that position group. You can't have a bad O-line. You can almost, we've seen teams with bad quarterbacks mask it up, yuck it up, and you hang in there. You can't hang in there with a bad O-line. There's no way. It can't work. It won't work.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Chiefs and the Eagles playing in the Super Bowl, multiple Pro Bowlers on.
The Bengals went through.
Exactly.
It cost them a Super Bowl, that O-line, and they had injuries. They had injuries at a horrible time, and it cost them this year. So the position group's that important. I mean, that's why Urban went berserk. It's probably why Saban is probably making life miserable for my guy Eric Wolford. The position group is that important. It has to be right. So We'll see.
Do you think we underachieved last year given the overall talent of our offensive line? Because we
No,
potentially, I mean, with Paris being a first round pick and Dewan being second or third round in all likelihood, do you think we underachieved?
Whippler will get drafted too, and
Whippler will be a third
and
round pick.
Donovan Jackson will eventually get drafted. Matt Jones is either going to be a late round pick or be in someone's camp. I didn't think they underachieved. No, I just think the defense was awful. I mean, they moved it up and down the field on Georgia. They kind of slowed down in the second half against Michigan. I don't know, but overall, I wouldn't lay the blame, if there's blame, on a year when you make the playoffs. I wouldn't put blame on anyone. I mean, so much, but other than on the defensive side of the ball, there's a ton of blame to go around. When you give up 90 points or whatever in the two biggest games of the year, you certainly aren't blaming Paris Johnson when the offense is putting points on the board and the defense just can't stop anyone. It's not DeJuan Jones's fault. So yeah.
I got you. Quick question, Sue, who's on every night. Appreciate you, Sue.
Yeah.
James Laurinaitis, his recruiting chops, Sammy Brown, a kid that, it's funny. As soon as we got James as a GA, which most people don't think of as a big role, the recruits are coming out of the woodwork, talking about how much they like and have a great relationship with James. Talk about a little bit about Sammy Brown and what do you see happening over the next year with James Laurinaitis and his career arc?
Well, I think he has to be on the road because you're going to try to recruit Sammy Brown. You're not going. This is not like recruiting these Ohio O linemen where you're trying to beat Michigan State and Indiana for these kids. You go after Sammy Brown. Okay, now you're going after Kirby Smart and you're going after Nick Saban for a Southern kid. And you're trying to recruit him with a guy that can't go on the road. Do you think Nick and Kirby will have his guys on the road to see Sammy Brown this spring?
Oh
yeah. So you're number one. You're going out of your area, and you're going after for the guy who can text him. He can call him, but he can't go see him. When Alabama, there's a guy with a polo shirt on with that big A on his chest. He's standing there. He's there every minute he can be in that school. He's going to be there. And then there's a Georgia Bulldog standing there, but you're going to text him later tonight. It's tough, man. It's tough. James has to be on the road.
Yeah.
When that guy from Bama's walking in that hallway to see the coach and see the kid, James has got to be right behind him or already been there already. It's going to be hard if he stays in this GA role. It's going to be really hard to win Sammy Brown because those other schools, Bama and Georgia, are going to be like, you're going to play for a GA? What are you doing here? Next year, how often do you think Bama's going to be at Sammy Brown's games? Like all of them. They're going to be there every time you turn around. You're going to think that Bama coach is on the staff at Sammy Brown's high school because he's there as much as he can be there. Well, if James can't be there, you're at such a huge disadvantage. So you want to recruit Sammy Brown, then you put James on the road. Until that happens, and they can't go on the road till April. So maybe, Ryan Day's got some things in the works here that, I don't know about. So maybe when, the spring evaluation phase opens up, maybe James is first one on the road, first one out the door. They make some tweaks in the coaching staff and get James on the road. But if not, I mean, we haven't seen, great recruiting chops out of Jim Knowles. I looked at that linebacker group that he brought in last year, and I see no one. Zero's not good. When you were looking at, Tackett Curtis and the Troy Bowles, and you end up with nothing. So I think they have to get James on the road. You want to go recruit Sammy Brown. You don't want to do it with one hand tied behind your back going against the best of the SEC. It's a lot to ask of James to recruit Sammy Brown when everybody else is able to do things you can't do. It's tough. It's a tough way to go. So put James on the road, and then I think Ohio State's in that. Then they battle for anyone.
I think that the second they activate James and they demote Parker Fleming or whoever they demote, because you can only have 10 guys on the road right now. And again, no hard feelings. I'm just, I'm looking at it from this is business and coaching. Like if you're a zero in recruiting, then, and you're not And again, like, Jim Knowles 2 years ago was like the best coordinator in the country last year, average at best. And then all of a sudden you've got, James, who I literally, and this, people call me crazy. I hope you guys tag me and call me crazy. James is the third best recruiter on the staff already, the third biggest name. You said Ryan Day into high school, Brian Hartline, and then who's ahead of James? Is it not
I
Tony?
feel,
It's not Justin.
yeah, I've described JL. I've described him as the next Heartline.
Oh
But
yeah,
you got, Brian. But Brian wouldn't be Brian today if he were still a GA. He wouldn't be
exactly.
Brian Hartline. You're not recruiting these kids from South Florida if they don't ever see you. They don't know who you are. And, the Bama receiver coach is there as often as he can be there. So turn JL loose. Yeah, like I said, I mean, this is business, not personal. We're not trying to be nasty to someone or mad at someone. It's just, you want to win or you don't. Is it a hobby or is it a passion? Who are you? If it's just a
Yeah.
hobby, okay. It's not a hobby to Bama, not a hobby to Georgia. So I don't see 10 better recruiters right now on the road for Ohio State, better than James Laurinaitis, that he would be the 11th best recruiter. I don't see that. You can't tell me that's the way it is. Plus, I don't see where what we saw last year out of Jim Knowles, I don't see where he gets to say, well, I want to coach linebackers and be the DC, which is how they hired him. And he said, I coach linebackers too. Well, after year one, it'd be like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You just be the coordinator. We're going to take linebackers away from you. We're going to give it to an 11-year NFL guy who didn't get by with, James Laurinaitis didn't get by with talent. There were more talented dudes, taller, longer, faster than he was. But you know what? He was like Brian Hartline. He found a way through intelligence and smarts. You know what I mean? I don't want to hire Randy Moss. No knock on Randy Moss. I don't want to hire him as my wide receiver coach and have him say, just do it like I did it. Well, they can't do it like you did it. But you can do it the way Brian Hartline did, which was by intelligence, hard work, just learning your craft. That's who James was. So I know James can teach it on the field. And then we both, you know him better than I do, but I know enough of James to know that this is a potential rock star as a recruiter. And I don't see a lot of rock stars. Hartline's one. Hartline's a rock star. Rock star. Well, I think James can be too. So tweak the staff a little bit, tweak the NIL a little bit. I think Ohio State is, they showed they're close. I mean, they could have won a national title last year. Last year was the year to do it.
Yeah.
There were no great teams last year. I mean, that Georgia team struggled with my Kent State Flashes. The Flashers gave them a game. Kentucky held them to 16 points. Missouri had them beat. So last year was not a banner year. So they threw one away last year. So, but you can't go back. You look forward. So, yeah, to sum it up, I think James Laurinaitis has got to be on the road. And some way you got to make that happen. That he has to be out there. And like you said, I mean, I don't know where he would rank in terms of recruiters, pure recruiters on this staff, but he ain't 11. I promise you, he ain't 11.
I don't know if he'd build for me. I don't know if you put him on the road this year and you let him go hit the road and really recruit.
Turn him loose.
Don't put him below 3. I mean, because you look at our defensive guys. I mean, LJ is on his last legs. I mean, and Perry, Tim Walton's an NFL guy. I think Perry's a rock star.
I like Ileana.
I think that James in the Midwest and even nationally. I mean, he played in St. Louis and LA Rams all-time leading tackler, and he was.
Hartline is not offering 3-star wideouts from Ohio right now.
No, God.
Okay, no. He's going and battling, and that's what I want out of every position on my staff. Why should it just be Brian? Why is Brian the only one that has to go out and the quarterbacks? Why do you only want the best of the best at wide receiver and at quarterback? Why? Why not every spot? Every spot. I want the best I can get. You're going up against people. It's not a hobby to these people. The SEC has, how many of the last titles they have? Look at the last 20. They got most of them for a reason. And I count Clemson as an SEC team because that's how they approach it. They're serious there. Florida State won one back in the day, and that wasn't a hobby for that group. Believe me, Bobby Bowden and those guys, they did everything they could do over the years. So if you look at the last 20, I'd want to do it the way those guys are doing it. It ain't a hobby to them. It's the best phrase you can have when you're describing what if the goal is to win a national title. Man, it's hard. It's hard. So if you have a superstar recruiter, he has to be out on the road. And I'm sure, we're here complaining about this, and maybe Ryan Day is sitting at home in his living room watching this video thinking, you idiots, he's going to be on the road, so shut up. Just chill out. I got time. And he does. They do have time. When does the evaluation period open up? It's mid-April, I think, or late April.
It's literally like 2 days after the spring game. They moved the spring game up. Again, this is an Urban Meyer thing. This is why Urban Meyer is a genius. Urban, back in the olden days, the Trussell days, we used to have the spring game at the end of April. It'd be like April 28th or whatever. And Urban got here and he's like, why on earth would you have it that late where you missed 2 weeks of spring recruiting and visits? So we instantly moved it up to April 15th. So then on April 17th, all of these wonderful coaches are on the road for 6 weeks. Sure. They're gone.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but if you want JL, you want him to go get Sammy Brown the way Hartline can go get JJ Smith or Carnell Tate. Well, you got to turn him loose. He can't just have a cell phone sitting at home texting Sammy Brown when everybody else is watching Sammy in spring football and Sammy play his spring game. They're all there. You're not there because you're a GA. Ain't gonna work.
Well, and the other thing is like, it's not just the guys you offer, it's the guys that are 25s, 26s. If you're doing the evals and you're supposed to own that linebacker room like they're trying to say that he does, you have to see what these guys look like. Because again, you can watch a highlight tape, you can see some old grainy video, but like, I want to see what he looks like now as these kids, not being grossing, these kids hit puberty. Some kids hit puberty in 8th grade, some hit puberty in 11th grade. So there's a lot of guys, you got to see where are they at the development cycle? How big are they? Are they allergic to the weight room? Some of these guys, they look great on film and you see them and they look like little gangly dudes. You're just like,
Well, you also want James on the road developing relationships with these coaches. You're going to be going to St. You're going to go to St. Thomas Aquinas every year. What I mean? Hartline is amazing because Hartline, when he's out there representing Ohio State, he's putting him in the game with Cormani McClain. Cormani doesn't play wide receiver. Dijon Johnson, Cedric Hawkins. Hartline's the first contact that Ohio State has with these kids. You eventually turn them over to Perry Iliano. You turn them over, to Larry Johnson. But, when you're out there in that area, you're laying the groundwork. And the head coach, when he tells you, hey, man, I got a freshman going to be a sophomore next year that you really need to know about. You don't get that on text message. It doesn't work that way. You have to be there. And that's how you get that kid to come to camp when he's just a baby. Because James Laurinaitis has told him, you need to come to camp, man. We want to see you. You don't get that over text message.
Nope.
So he's got to be out there. And that's just my final thought on this whole. We could talk about James for an hour.
Forever.
It's like the bottom line is get him out there on the road. This is not personal. It's business. It's business. Okay. You want to run it like the mob runs it, like they ran it back in the 20s. Watch the Godfather movie.
Michael Corleone Bank.
It's not personal, Sonny. Not personal, Sonny. It's business.
Never go against the family. I agree. And with James's knowledge, I'm telling you, one of the best things you can do with these kids is start coaching them during recruiting or when you're just getting to know them, because you might give a kid a couple tips while you're sitting there visiting with him, and all of a sudden he's like, wow, I never thought to do that, coach. Wow, that's a great drill, coach. Wow, you watched my tape and you said, hey, you need to go get out of your back pedal quicker when you're making breaks in coverage or whatever. James will say some stuff, because that was something that I used to do as a GA. I remember coaching up Jamarco Jones at Friday Night Lights, And I love Jamarco like a son. I still talk to Jamarco all the time. One of my favorite players of all time. And like, we're sitting there eating, hot dogs and chicken and macaroni and cheese or whatever they had at the end of the Friday Night Lights thing. They had that little lunch thing or dinner thing after they worked out. And I'm teaching him about his vertical set and kind of, this is some stuff I learned in the NFL. This is some stuff to just keep in the back of your mind, how to size guys up, mix up your pass sets. And he like loved that because like, it wasn't just, who's your favorite player? What's your favorite Xbox game? It was like actually real game.
Yeah.
And that's something that James, if he goes out on the road and evaluates these kids and he gives them a couple tips, then all of a sudden they'll be like, wow, I can't imagine if I come play for this guy. Then all of a sudden I get this every day. I can't imagine how good I'd be if this guy's putting all this effort into me. Like what kind of polished diamond I'll become working for James Laurinaitis for 3 to 5 years as an Ohio State kid. So, well,
I saw one time, I covered all those All-Star games for 15 years in a row, and I was at the Under Armour game down in Orlando. It's in Disney. It's a great setting, and they practice for a week, then they have their game at the end of the week, and they always bring in NFL guys to kind of talk to the kids. And usually what these guys do is they speak before practice. They'll have some sort of canned talk, work hard, get your grades, listen to your mom, all that. I've heard them a million times. And then those guys stand around, talk, and, it's no big deal. Well, they brought Deion Sanders in one time. And I thought, oh, yeah, here's Neon Deion, prime. He's going to No, I watched him coach DBs. Ha Clinton Dix, who was the name back then. He was the dude at the Under Armour game. And he ran a drill, and Deion, like, threw the defensive back coach who was coaching the All-Star game, like threw him out of the way and grabbed Clinton Dix and was trying to get him to do a backpedal drill correctly. And just either wasn't getting it or he wasn't doing it right. And Deion got so exasperated. He like threw his warm-up jacket off and got down in a stance and did a backpedal drill. And it was like watching deers jump over a fence. Like if you ever see a graceful deer, just, man, they're just running where, a dog's going to run into a deer, gets up over the fence, and it's just so graceful. That's what he looked like. He did a backpedal drill, like threw his whistle down. He was so mad and exasperated. And he was like, this is how you got to do it. And he grabbed Clinton Dix and physically, like, you got to have your left foot here. You've got to have your hips turned. It was the most amazing coaching I'd ever seen. So then when Deion got into coaching and everybody's like, oh, he's just a name. I thought, no, he's not. I watched him when he didn't even have to be there. He was brought in to talk to the kids and give them the old listen to your mom, get your grade speech. No, it killed him that they were running this drill incorrectly. And he had nothing to do with it. He was not responsible for it. He was the guest speaker that day, and it just bothered him so much that he had to work. He worked with those DBs that day as hard as any position coach I've ever seen. And I knew right then, if this guy decides to go into coaching, it's inside him. You know what I mean? He's not going to be one of those guys, just watch a film and do what I did. And the kids are like, can't do what you did. You know what I mean? So he was so technical and so sound that's why he was Deion Sanders, because yes, he had the most God-given talent of any DB that's ever played the game before, but he knew the game. He practiced it. He worked it. You could see his work ethic. You could just see it was just coming out of him, where if he didn't give a crap, it'd be like, run the drill any way you run it. What do I care? Tomorrow I'm going to be back in my mansion and life's going to be good. I'll be playing golf. No, he couldn't stand it. And I knew right then, if this guy decides to go into, he was not into coaching then. He was just out of the NFL. And I thought if ever he would decide to go into coaching, he's gonna be great, because he's got the prime, he's got that going for him. But I saw the way he worked this drill when he had no responsibility at all. And it was like, man, this guy so detail oriented, and he just burned to have these guys do it right. He had to have these guys do it right, and it wasn't his group. So just a little, I don't know where I'm going with that. But
no, I totally agree though. And then he hires Mike Zimmer as his D coordinator, and he gets your boy Lou as his OC. I mean,
Yeah.
people can laugh. And again, Colorado, they stunk last year, so they're probably just gonna be marginally better this year. But like he's got a super legit coaching staff. It's not just prime and the primettes. Like he got a
No.
40-year NFL guy as his DC who was head coach of the Vikings for 10 years. I mean, he's got some dudes on that staff now.
No doubt.
Any final thoughts, Beck? This has been fantastic. We got Zach Smith tomorrow. We got the podcast tomorrow, so that'll be fantastic too. Menace to Scoop, me, you, Zach Smith. The whole world's gonna break tomorrow when that goes off. But any final thoughts? This is a great one today, man.
No, I would just watch the quarterback, watch what's going on with these quarterbacks right now. That it's really interesting how Ohio State's trying to play this thing. And right now, it almost looks like Nick Saban holds the cards right now. And with him hiring Tommy Rees, the one thing I want to see, do they offer CJ Carr tomorrow? Or does Tommy say, I'm going to Bama, dude. You'll have a great career at Notre Dame. I wish you the best. You wish me the best, but I'm going to Bama. You're going to Notre Dame. Or does Tommy Rees go to Nick Saban and say, we got to have CJ Carr. CJ Carr is my dude. We got to have him. And if they offer CJ Carr tomorrow, what does that do to Julian saying? What does that do to that offer to Aaron Nolan? So Nick's kind of holding the cards right now. And then when he brings in Tommy Rees, it throws another dynamic into this with CJ Carr. So that's what I'm looking for, is to see if they're going to offer CJ Carr, it'll be within the next 72 hours, would you think?
Oh,
If
absolutely.
Tommy Rees is going to go on his dude, he's not going to wait 6 months and then say, hey, CJ, let's get back together. If he's going to go on CJ Carr, it's going to be within the next 3 or 4 days.
Oh, I would do just to mess with Notre Dame. I'd go send that offer out and just, hey, 'cause like you say, it's not a hobby down there. There's no friends down there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Bank, you're the man. I appreciate you, man. This was a great one. So I'm going to wrap this thing up. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. This was a good one. The Bank is killing it, as always. Bank always has the best takes. I love getting these interviews on, talking recruiting, talking about the dynamics of Ohio State football. If you guys enjoyed this, leave us a like. We appreciate you guys, as always. Click subscribe. I'm telling you, if you really love these live shows, click the little alert bell because it'll let you know when we go live. We're doing these very often in the off season. We are coming up with a lot of stuff to talk about. It's truly a blast. We love interacting with you guys. If you could spread the word, tell your friends. This thing has been growing like crazy. Our subscribers have been growing like crazy. So thank you guys so much for that. We appreciate you guys. If you guys want the best content, if you enjoy this type of atmosphere, this kind of fun, this deep, really thorough discussion about Ohio State football, BuckeyeScoop.com is your spot. The number one spot for inside information. We are always getting stuff from inside the WAC. It makes it really fun. We're going to have some breakdowns this week of some game stuff. We are moving towards a theater type experience where people are going to be able to watch some game film breakdowns, some Ohio State game film from this past year. That's going to be a new feature that we are working on right now. I think you guys will love that. So BuckeyeScoop.com is where you need to be at. Subscribe today. The number one premium community for Ohio State sports, particularly football. And we have some big hitters from Ohio State that subscribe to our site. I think you guys would fit in great there. That being said, if you enjoyed this, we're actually going to be back on at 8 o'clock with Nevadabuck. Nevadabuck and I are going to go for an hour, crank out another great hour of content, and we will see you guys there. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. And thank you, Buckeye Scoop family, especially you new Buckeye Scoop members. Appreciate you guys signing up. We got a bunch of new signups over the weekend. So thank you guys. Talk to you guys very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bucks.